speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. Throughout her life, Her Majesty the Queen, my beloved mother, was an inspiration, an example to me and to all my family. And we owe her the most heartfelt debt any family could owe to their mother, for her love, affection, guidance, understanding, and example. Queen Elizabeth was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today. Alongside the personal grief that all my family are feeling, we also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom, in all the countries where the Queen was head of state, in the Commonwealth and across the world, a deep sense of gratitude for the more than 70 years in which my mother, as Queen, served the people of so many nations. In 1947, on her 21st birthday, she pledged in a broadcast from Cape Town to the Commonwealth to devote her life, whether it be short or long, to the service of her peoples. That was more than a promise. It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life. She made sacrifices for duty. Her dedication and devotion as sovereign never wavered, through times of change and progress, through times of joy and celebration, and through times of sadness and loss. In her life of service, we saw that abiding love of tradition, together with that fearless embrace of progress, which makes us great as nations. The affection, admiration, and respect she inspired became the hallmark of her reign. And as every member of my family can testify, she combined these qualities with warmth, humor, and an unerring ability always to see the best in people. I pay tribute to my mother's memory, and I honor her life of service. I know that her death brings great sadness to so many of you, and I share that sense of loss beyond measure with you all. When the Queen came to the throne, Britain and the world were still coping with the privations and aftermath of the Second World War, and still living by the conventions of earlier times. In the course of the last 70 years, we have seen our society become one of many cultures and many faiths. The institutions of the state have changed in turn. But through all changes and challenges, our nation and the wider family of realms, of whose talents, traditions, and achievements I am so inexpressibly proud, have prospered and flourished. Our values have remained, and must remain, constant. The role and the duties of monarchy also remain, as does the sovereign's particular relationship and responsibility towards the Church of England, the church in which my own faith is so deeply rooted. In that faith and the values it inspires, I have been brought up to cherish a sense of duty to others and to hold in the greatest respect the precious traditions, freedoms, and responsibilities of our unique history and our system of parliamentary government. As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life. My life will, of course, change as I take up my new responsibilities. It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply. But I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others. This is also a time of change for my family. I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla. In recognition of her own loyal public service since our marriage 17 years ago, she becomes my Queen Consort. I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much. As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades. Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground, where vital help can be given. I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas. In a little over a week's time, we will come together as a nation, as a Commonwealth, and indeed a global community, to lay my beloved mother to rest. In our sorrow, let us remember and draw strength from the light of her example. On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. They mean more to me than I can ever possibly express. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
And so the first King's Speech by Charles III, an emotional message to the world in which he expressed his love and thanks for his mother, and he laid out the kind of king he will be. He also, earlier than many people expected, announced that Prince William will become the Prince of Wales and Catherine, his wife, will become Princess of Wales, the title, of course, last held by William's mother. So I'm joined now by the royal historian and commentator Ed Owens, who's written about the moment of succession and how the new king has worked to ensure the survival of the monarchy. Ed Owens, that line that Charles said was, "The Queen was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today." That tells us a great deal about his intentions.
It really does. I think King Charles was drawing heavily on the kind of royal public language that we associated with the late Queen. This emphasis on public service, on duty, on putting the nation first. It was what endeared her to people both in Britain and around the Commonwealth, and I think he seeks to follow that model. It would certainly seem so from the King's first address.
There have been many years of speculation about this moment and how Charles would cope with it through the difficult years in which his own personal difficulties were laid out for all to see. It seems clear now, watching him, that, of course, this is the moment he has been prepared for, and the continuity with the way his mother governed is going to be very clear.
I think you're absolutely right. There has been speculation as to whether he would seek to evolve this idea of constitutional monarchy to suit the way that he performed his role as Prince of Wales. We know that he has been more outspoken in the past about issues ranging from environment and the natural world to homeopathic medicine, and of course the architecture and the built environment. And at times he's courted controversy, notably with the famous Black Spider memos, lobbying politicians, civil servants to try and pursue his aims in relation to certain issues. And yet here we heard our new monarch state that he would abide by constitutional protocol, that he would uphold the constitutional expectations that he has inherited from his mother. So I think this goes back to what our king said at the time of his 70th birthday, that when he acceded to the throne, he would no longer voice his political opinions, that he would embrace a more non-partisan, impartial and, crucially, uncontentious role.
Right, but his mother had to oversee extraordinary changes over the course of her reign in terms of how the monarchy was seen, how it interacted with the British public and the government, and how it communicated with all of us. There will be as much, if not more, change in the reign of Charles III, surely.
I think there's going to be great change. I think the world has changed dramatically just in the last 10 years, and the rate of change is increasing all the time. And at the same time, I think he will want the monarchy, the crown, under his leadership, to act as that focal point of stability and continuity, the kind of glue that has held the nation together up until this point. We live in a world where there is greater political polarization than has been the case for 30, 40 years, where there is greater anger in the public sphere because of things like social media. I would like to think that in embracing this role as monarch, King Charles will look to impart to the public a sense of what his mother had offered with this idea of stability, of continuity, trying to ensure that there is an emphasis on healing.
Naming Prince William as the Prince of Wales today on his first speech, of the importance of the Prince of Wales and how it may also be the two of them together going forward.
I think this identification, as we've just heard, of William now as Prince of Wales, he has nominated him. The monarchy has always sought to shore up the symbolic link between England, Wales and the other two Celtic nations. William now becomes that symbolic link alongside his wife, Catherine. We can expect an investiture in the next year, maybe in the next 2 years, where he will be formally invested in terms of that role as well with his role as Prince of Wales. I think you're absolutely right. The King highlighted how the two of them are going to be working together and fronting the monarchy in the absence of Elizabeth II and, as we heard, of Harry. The new king wished his son well and spoke lovingly of trying to continue to support both Prince Harry and his wife Meghan. But clearly the focus is now on William, Catherine, Prince and Princess of Wales, working alongside our new King and Queen Consort.
Ed Owens, for now, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, today has been rounded by solemn ceremony in remembrance of the Queen and marking King Charles's first full day as Britain's new monarch. Let's go to our political editor, Gary Gibbon, who is in Westminster. Gary.
I think that broadcast will define his first day, if not his reign. You saw the King there engaging with a lot of the things that have ever been levelled at him by his critics, expressing, as you were just discussing there, his love for Harry and Meghan, insisting that he will uphold solemnly the democratic constitutional nature of this country. He won't go espousing his views, championing the causes that he has done as Prince of Wales. He directly engaged with that. It was quite bold stuff. The Queen, at a young age coming to the throne, didn't have to talk through all these issues that had arisen in her earlier years. He's 73. All sorts of issues have arisen in a sometimes turbulent life. He mentioned expressly trying to engage people with the idea that Camilla would be his Queen Consort, and that was what he wanted and that was what he needed. And don't forget, he was saying she'd been by my side for 17 years. But criticism of the Queen Consort, as she now is, has reduced enormously since a high point years ago. But nonetheless, he engaged with that. He mentioned Scotland, and he wanted to mention the pride with which he held titles in Scotland. All the issues you might have thought he'd danced away from or not engaged with in his very first moments on the throne, he did. He even alluded to the idea that has been talked about, that he may want to proclaim himself some kind of protector of all faiths, not just the Church of England. So a lot packed into that short address to the nation, as well as, of course, his solemn and very warm tribute to his mother. And the whole day here has been dominated by tributes to the Queen, many of them solemn, but also moments of humour. The nation's first sighting of the new King, Aberdeen Airport, this morning. After 70 years as heir to the throne, he was clutching a file for his first full day as monarch. At noon, church bells across the country had begun ringing to mark the death of his mother, our Queen. At Westminster Abbey, where the Queen's funeral service will take place, people stopped, listened, reflected.
Order, order.
As the bells rang inside the Commons, the Speaker, wearing traditional mourning dress, white cuffs known as weepers to dab tears, called a minute's silence in memory of Queen Elizabeth. In the Lords, they stood in silence too. Still clutching that file, the King landed at Northolt Airport and drove into London, past some of the giant images of the Queen now on advertising hoardings. And to the delight of waiting crowds at Buckingham Palace, instead of sweeping straight in, the King got out and shook hands with dozens in the crowd. They offered their condolences. "You're very kind," the King said. A chorus of the newly worded national anthem broke out. One shouted, "We loved your mum." Two from the crowd leant over to kiss him. Then he was joined by the Queen Consort, a title the late Queen made absolutely sure that the Duchess of Cornwall would be granted when her husband became king. They passed floral tributes in memory of the Queen, stacked at the very railings where a quarter of a century ago they were placed in memory of his first wife. They were redirected to another gate and then into Buckingham Palace, to record his first broadcast to the nation as monarch, a tribute to his mother. Back in the Commons, MPs were paying their tributes to the late Queen and welcoming King Charles to the throne.
Even as he mourns, his sense of duty and service is clear. He has already made a profound contribution through his work on conservation, education, and his tireless diplomacy. We owe him our loyalty and devotion. The British people, the Commonwealth, and all of us in this House will support him as he takes our country forward to a new era of hope and progress, our new Carolean age. The crown endures, our nation endures, and in that spirit, I say, God save the King.
The reason our loss feels so profound is not just because she stood at the head of our country for 70 years, but because, in spirit, she stood amongst us. As we move forward, as we forge a new path, as we build towards a better future, she will always be with us. For all she gave us and all she will continue to give us, we say thank you. May our Queen rest in peace. God save the King.
Now, I know I speak for other Prime Ministers when I say ex-Prime Ministers, when I say that she helped to comfort and guide us as well as the nation, because she had the patience and the sense of history to see that troubles come and go and that disasters are seldom as bad as they seem. And it was that indomitability, that humour, that work ethic and that sense of history which together made her Elizabeth the Great. And when I call her that, I should add one, Elizabeth the Great, I should add one final quality, of course, which was her humility. Her single-bar electric fire Tupperware using refusal to be grand. And unlike us politicians, with our outriders and our armour-plated convoys, I can tell you, as a direct eyewitness, that she drove herself in her own car with no detectives and no bodyguard, bouncing at alarming speed over the Scottish landscape to the total amazement of the ramblers and the tourists we encountered.
Across the nations of the world and for so many people, meeting Queen Elizabeth simply made their day, and for many will be the memory of their life. Of course, for those of us who had the honour to serve as one of her Prime Ministers, those meetings were more frequent with the weekly audiences. These were not meetings with a high and mighty monarch, but a conversation with a woman of experience and knowledge and immense wisdom. They were also the one meeting I went to which I knew would not be briefed out to the media. And the cheese remained on the table.
Outside, the death gun salute was fired to honour the Queen's memory. In London, in Edinburgh, Cardiff, Gibraltar. 96 rounds fired, one for every year of Queen Elizabeth's life.
Gary Gibbon reporting there. Well, of course, inside St Paul's Cathedral, the congregation of about 2,000, mostly members of the public, who went here on a first-come, first-served basis, were listening to the King's first speech to the nation, that extraordinary address in which he mentioned the word love 4 times, talked about his loving wife, his darling mama, his darling papa. This is a different kind of King Charles, and now, of course, we can see the pictures inside the cathedral, here at St Paul's, the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, sitting next to Sadiq Khan, the mayor, James Cleverly, foreign secretary, and of course Liz Truss there as well, the Prime Minister, on day 4 of her job, giving a speech. Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons, you can see there on the left of the screen. And this is really the first time that both the public and the political elite, as it were, have got together in this very important church in order to remember the Queen, but also to look forward. It'll be the first time that we hear the words of the anthem, rewritten for King Charles, God Save the King, sung in this official kind of setting. So let's just listen to some of the music that's been played inside. This is one of the processional hymns. It is the All My Hope on God Is Founded hymn. Let's just listen. That was the hymn inside St Paul's Cathedral behind me. Now, the Queen will, of course, not be buried here. She will be buried. The burial service will take place at Westminster Abbey. I think it is on Monday, the 19th of September, although that has yet to be confirmed by the palace. At the same time, we have the first official portrait of King Charles III. I think we can show you that. Yeah, there it is. That's the first official portrait of King Charles III. Obviously made in the same room where he recorded his address to the nation that we heard just a few minutes ago. The picture of his mother next to him on the desk. He has very, very big shoes to fill. Judging from what he said to the nation just now, he is very aware of that. He's very aware that he has to mend bridges within his own family. He talked about wishing his loving son, Harry, and of course Meghan, all the best in the life that they've chosen for themselves abroad. It was a very poignant and very moving address by a man who has not just become the monarch, but also, of course, is the son of the mother that he lost yesterday. Well, enough from here for now. St Paul's Cathedral will be returning throughout the programme. Let's go to Jackie Long outside the gates of Balmoral. Jackie.
Well, crowds of people have been arriving here at Balmoral since the news first broke yesterday. They've been leaving flowers, toys, personal messages, often very emotional, recalling the huge love the Queen had for Scotland and its people. And it's a scene that's been recreated at the royal residencies throughout the UK. Our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davis is at Windsor Castle. Andy.
When we arrived here this morning, among those leaving flowers were people on their way to work, people bringing their children here on their way to school, and it must have been a few dozen at most. It is a much bigger crowd now. Barriers have gone up. They've opened up a new area for the inevitable influx of more flowers. And they're expecting a much bigger crowd over the weekend as people travel distances to get here and to the other palaces. And it's been interesting when you speak to people after they've given their tributes to the Queen, how often they've said how surprised they are by their own emotional reactions to what's happened. This is how some people here in Windsor and elsewhere around the UK have been marking today. They headed for the castle early this morning, down the long walk, created in a time of King Charles II, and now for many a focal point in the new age of Charles III. At the Cambridge Gate entrance, images of the Queen adorned flowers. In silence they read messages, captured the moment, and for some the news is still overwhelming.
I actually work in Eton, and yeah, it's very shocking news. And sorry, it's just, she was our sovereign. She's going to be very missed. I can't believe how much it means to me and to everybody.
With his corgis, Sam Cader, a local care home owner, reflects too on the last 24 hours.
It's very similar to the late Diana, that I didn't actually really realise how emotional I would be. I didn't think I would realise how much she meant to me or to my everyday life. I think that it's a profound change, a constant that's no longer there. Some sort of stability seems to have shifted. It's the very first banknote I held, the very first coin that I ever held had her head on it. It seems very strange that that'll now change.
At another entrance, castle wardens form a rolling vigil. And so, below this royal town's ubiquitous bunting, more gather here. Among them a couple from Sunderland, who'd previously booked a tour of the castle for today, now cancelled.
She was like the mother of the country, wasn't she? Really, she was. So we've lost the mother of our country, really, when you look at it, you know, but we've got a king now and we've just got to hope he can do as good a job as Queen Elizabeth did, and I think he will.
Your emotions today?
Undescribable. I've never known anything about Queen. You know, you've got to be 80 years old before to have known anything else about Queen.
A different palace, Buckingham, but it was a similar scene, rich in sentiment and improvised tributes. Some comforted one another in the shadow of a balcony where so often they cheered the Queen.
I think she'll be remembered as one of the most extraordinary leaders in a time of tremendous change. She's really reminded us of what it means to be putting something, you know, taking a vow and taking that seriously. I'm suddenly emotional about this. I hadn't really thought about it. She will be sorely missed.
Across the country, along roads, at bus stops, in shopping centres and train stations, emerged the defining images of this national moment.
So we've just talked about, with the Queen passing,
marked in schools like this one in Solihull, at mosques too, such as here in Cardiff.
For the nation, it's like a huge thing, because she's been running for like 70 years or something. And then it's just the change that's going to happen now. It's going to be major.
Outside St Paul's Cathedral, they queued for tickets for tonight's memorial service.
My mum was a refugee to this country, and she came from a former British colony. And it is sometimes difficult as the son of a refugee to reconcile your two identities. And one of the things that helped me was to know that the Queen was also my grandfather's Queen, and he actually served her, and I think he served her with the same pride that I mourn her today.
Back in Windsor, it's busy on the high street. There's no obligation to suspend business in this formal period of mourning, so the flower shops do a brisk trade. And on her way to the castle today, we meet 96-year-old Tamira Carson, born just 3 months after the Queen, here with her daughter. And when you heard the news yesterday?
A few tears in my eyes, but one has to accept it. She wasn't young. And she did marvelous, really. On Tuesday she performed, said goodbye to Boris, say hello to the new Prime Minister, and on Thursday she's gone. What a way to go. No hospital, no pain, nothing at all, just a gentle departure. So I wish her peace.
Old and young, they came in their numbers to Windsor today, at the gates of a castle quietly preparing as a new reign begins.